Mamoru Hosoda was born in September 19th of 1967 and grew up in Nakanikawa, Toyama in Japan. Hosoda was inspired to take up animation as a career after seeing the film Lupin III: The Castle of Cagliostro, the first film directed by Hayao Miyazaki of Studio Ghibli fame. After receiving his major in oil painting at the Kanazawa College of Art in Ishikawa Prefecture, Hosoda applied for Studio Ghibli, only to receive a rejection letter by Miyazaki himself. But for a backup plan, he actually got work for Toei Animation, and during his time at Toei, Hosoda worked his way up in the animation industry, garnering public attention in the early 2000s as an episode director, storyboard, layout, key animation for anime like Ashita no Naja, or Tomorrow's Naja, One Piece, Slam Dunk, Gegege no Kitaro, and a variety of anime movies like Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon. He also directed an anime series on his own called Alice SOS, even attracting the eye of the head of Studio Ghibli, Toshio Suzuki, who got Hosoda a job to direct Howl's Moving Castle, but sadly left due to creative differences. But over time, Hosoda was invested in making anime films of his own creation. That led him down the path towards the man we know today, and the movies that he made that inspired us. So I thought it'd be an interesting idea to look back on all the movies that Mamoru Hosoda has directed over the years. They are somewhat my opinions, what I think about these movies, and what I think that their inspirations were from. So let's take a look at the very beginning when he was working in Toei Animation, with the first movie he ever directed.
Greymon now.
Mamoru Hosoda's first film, everyone tends to know it, it's based off one of the most popular IPs at the time, Digimon Adventures. For the first movie that Hosoda ever directed, he got the chance of a lifetime to direct one of the biggest franchises into a film adaptation, and he did it well enough to do it a second time. I actually talked about the film, when I was still trying to try out the new content I wanted to make besides the bridge parodies, and I did miss a few things about this movie. For starters, Digimon Adventure the movie and Digimon Adventure Our War Game were directed by Hosoda, while the third film, which I won't be talking about, Digimon Hurricane Landing Transcendent Evolution The Goalie Digimentals, was directed by Shigeyasu Yamauchi. So I will be talking more about the first two, though I will be using the English version, sadly, because it's the only version I own. Plus, it also gives me a reason not to talk about the Angela Anaconda short that came with this movie. Ugh. The first Digimon Adventures movie is more of a prequel of how a young Tai and a young Kari first interact with a Digimon who happens to be Agumon. Well, his evolution line. Some people wouldn't really consider this a movie, more of a short film, but, you know, details. Though the second film, Our War Game, is definitely more of a movie, as it takes place after the Digimon anime, and a Digimon named Diaboromon is taking over the internet, causing a lot of digital errors that could lead to, catastrophe. So Tai and his friends have to get their Digimon into the digital world of the internet and take down Diaboromon. I'll also say, animation-wise, these are still really good-looking films. But considering this is Mamoru Hosoda's first movie, I will generally say it is the weakest. And the US version is considered the worst adaptation, mostly due to the fact that the film itself is a Frankenstein's monster of 3 Digimon films thrown into one, and it's filled with so many outdated pop culture references, it's practically a time capsule in itself. And for once, we don't have to blame 4Kids on this situation. We have to blame Fox and Saban, the people who owned the license of the series at the time. And I'd generally be honest, if Hosoda ever saw this adaptation, and I'm pretty sure he has, he would not be really happy about it. In all honesty, I'd actually recommend finding the Japanese versions, but like the Pokemon anime, the original Japanese version is unavailable in the US. Probably due to some licensing or some sort, but odds are you can probably find it with a VPN to Japan, just no subtitles. But some Digimon fans still regard it as a pretty interesting film. Funnily enough, this isn't the only anime film Hosoda directed with Toei Animation. Believe it or not, he also adapted one of the most popular IPs in Japan.
お祭り島へ行く。なぜなら俺たちは海賊だから。
Bet you didn't know Mamoru Hosoda made another popular series in movie format, this time being the most iconic series out there, One Piece. and the movie he made was Baron Omatsuri and the Secret Island, the 6th film in the One Piece franchise. Taking place after the Alabasta arc, as Ramen is part of the crew, the Straw Hat Pirates discover a map to a place called Omatsuri Island, an island of pleasure, fun, and relaxation. But as they arrive, they get themselves roped into a competition by the ruler of the island, Baron Omatsuri. As the games go on, there lies a secret about the island, with the Baron at the source of it all. While that's happening, the Islanders are using the competition to turn the Straw Hats against one another. When looking for more information about this movie, I was surprised to find that this film was pretty divisive, as people either loved it or hated it. As a first-time watcher of this film, and a big One Piece fan, I thought this movie was really good. I think what makes this movie so divisive was how the crew interacted with one another. And I've said in the past that mean-spirited anime can work, but there is a right and a wrong way of doing it. Baron Omatsuri in the Secret Island uses the conflict in a good way. As the Straw Hats are turned against one another, Luffy isn't there to see it, showing that Luffy is the glue that keeps this crew together. And when faced with one of the darkest moments in the series, I'm not kidding when I say this movie goes from silly fun to potential nightmare fuel. It shows an important story element Hosoda and the One Piece series is best known for, and that is the bond of the Straw Hats. Even though Chopper and Robin were still fairly new, Luffy still shows how much he cares for his crew, that his emotions do get the better of him. The film released in Japan exclusively in 2005, which was also when 4Kids Entertainment got the broadcasting rights for it to be put in the 4Kids network. Considering the adaptation we got, I think we lucked out and we didn't get a re-release of this in the US. Just when I say I'm pretty certain 4Kids would have found a way to botch this movie royally up. But that also sadly means this was one of the many One Piece films that are still Japan exclusive, meaning that there isn't really a proper way to watch these in the US. Though I haven't seen every One Piece film, I'd still say it's a hidden gem. And funnily enough, the last film that Hosoda would make with Toei Animation. Way to go out on a high note. But that was due to the fact that he was given a job opportunity by MADHOUSE, where he was given creative freedom to make or adapt whatever he wanted, and used everything he learned from Toei to make his first, somewhat original, animated film.
I thought today was supposed to be a nice day.
Released in the summer of 2006 was the beginning of Hosoda's rise to fame, with The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, a story about Makoto Kono, a high school girl who manages to time travel after busting a nut. With this known ability, she actually decides to do whatever she wants with it, but when faced with actual real-deal situations, would she ever use her time travel for good? Well, let's first explain in the time travel and how it works in this film. For starters, when Makoto time travels, she can't seem to stick the landing for the most part. The time travel segments, especially the first one we see, are a bit of an acid trip of animation, similar to the animation style used in our war game, and would soon be used again in his next big film. With the ability to time travel, of course Makoto would abuse the ever-living crap out of it. She's a high school kid. I think most of us would abuse that kind of power, given the circumstances. Though apparently her rules for time travel is that she can only go to places that she's been to prior, or, she basically just goes to places that she wants to go in time. They don't really address the rules of time travel that well, and time travel as a concept is really hard to adapt in movies. But the movie is more than just Makoto, it's also about her bonds with her best friends, and honestly, the bond that they show together is actually really strong, to the point where Makoto doesn't know how to feel when her best friend has feelings for her. And with the knowledge that Makoto holds with this romance of her friend, it makes her feel very uncomfortable and she doesn't know how to feel about him. I think that's a really great thing to use with time travel, that she still has the memories of all the stuff that she's seen in other timelines, but that also gives her a lot of burdens about other situations. The film isn't perfect, as the movie at times can have some awkward pauses, and with limited animation at the time, can make it feel a bit awkward. Makoto's aunt may at first seem like an unnecessary story point, but it does give the idea on how Makoto feels about the effects of time travel, and for Makoto to better understand her own feelings. Not to mention, it also gives her the idea of consequences through her time travel, adding a more deeper story element to it. But the film still left a major impact, not just to the audience, but for Hosoda himself. Makoto taking a leap of faith is such an impactful image. It's the symbol of Studio Chizu, because it was what Hosoda was doing when he was making this film, taking a leap of faith. If you think this film will leave that impact for you, then go and take that leap for yourself.
You just said... Well, then count us both in.
Two might get complicated.
Huh?
All I need's one. So who's it gonna be?
Anime again by Madhouse and released in 2009 in Japan and 2010 in the US, it's Summer Wars. I remember seeing the trailer for this film back during my early years of high school on my school computer on Apple.com, and I still own the DVD from my first anime convention. So you could say this film has left a major impact for me. Summer Wars is about Oz, a Facebook-like application that could even be used on flip phones, with the modern quality of life integrations with VTubers, and a company that actually cares about a user's privacy. Surprisingly enough, the film spends a quarter of the film in Oz, as the main story of the film is about a high school students Kenshi and Natsuki forming a fake relationship on a summer trip to Natsuki's family estate for their grandmother's 90th birthday. Her family, the Jino Uchi clan, are an interesting ragtag family with some interesting day jobs and are, well, pretty odd. However, an AI called Love Machine causes all kinds of hell in Oz, stealing accounts, causing major damage towards people's lives, and it's up to Kenji, Natsuki, and the Jino Uchi clan to take down this evil monstrosity of a machine. Summer Wars I don't just consider one of my favorite Mamoru Hosoda films, I still consider it as one of my favorite films, but not my all-time favorite. We'll get to that soon. There are just a lot of interesting scenes I really like in this film, such as the scene where Kenji gets arrested is kinda both sad, yet pretty funny. And of course, yes, someone's gonna make the comparisons, this is literally our war game, except the dub wasn't entirely ruined. My guess is that he actually really liked the concept of how he made our war game, that he kind of adapted it more than once. Also, this is the film where I learned what Hanafuda was, though I still don't know how to play it. But of course, my favorite part of this movie is the third act of the film. It is the best part, with action, spectacular visuals, and an emotional final act. But I think the most important part of Summer Wars is its understanding about family. The family of Summer Wars, the Jino Uchis, aren't perfect. They each have their own weird flaws. They complain and get into arguments with one another. But it also shows that family is always there for you, even through the toughest of times. When it comes to Hosoda's writing, his ideas on family I think are some of the best written stuff he's made. And of course, after the success of Summer Wars, both Mamoru Hosoda and Yurichiro Saito, a former animator of Madhouse, decided to open up their own animation studio in Suginami, Tokyo, which is the studio I mentioned before, Studio Chizu, which opened in 2011, and they were straight to work on their first animated film. And if you know which movie came next, well, let's just say Studio Chizu would be legendary.
It's almost done, Yuki. Just be patient.
Food now!
Look, I'm sorry, but
Food now!
Yuki.
Released in 2012 in Japan and 2013 in the US, my all-time favorite film, Wolf Children. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. This is my favorite movie of all time. The story of a university student, Hana, who falls in love with a man who can turn into a wolf. However, after the father dies from a tragic accident, Hana has to do her best to raise their wolf children, Yuki and Ame. I still remember watching this in theaters near my birthday, and I also happened to get the Blu-ray in the mail on the same day when I was going to see it, so yeah, let's just say this was probably destiny speaking. As I mentioned, I do have a lot of bias towards this film, and I'll explain why I consider it a masterpiece. For starters, I think Hana is one of the best written characters in animation. As we go through her struggles raising her children Yuki and Ame, she isn't a perfect person and has a hard time not raising just regular children, but wolf children. So you feel empathy towards her struggles. Not to mention, Hana's positive personality is so endearing. Though she has no idea what she's doing, and even sometimes will go into moments where she feels like she's not doing good enough, when you see Hana smile, you generally don't know if she's truly happy or if she's putting on a brave face, even when she's in situations that are really out of her control. Ame and Yuki are also really well written characters, as we see how much they grow and change throughout their childhood, and how a simple thought can change their personality entirely. I still think The Girl Who Left Through Time has too many silent moments that lead to some awkward pauses. Wolf Children uses those silent moments to further the story and to get a better understanding on the passage of time or how certain moments affect their lives. This was also the anime that taught me to love a series for its story, as the anime I normally watch had some sort of action or slapstick comedy. But this film taught me to enjoy heartfelt tales of coming-of-age stories, to the point where that genre has been one of my all-time favorites in animation. With that said, I don't think Wolf Children is just the best of Hosoda's work, I think it's one of the best films of all time. But I'll generally say, the next film is a close second.
time!
Stop already!
At this point, we know that Mamoru Hosoda's movies come out in a span of 3 years, both in Japan and in the US. So releasing in 2015 in Japan, 2016 in the US, comes Studio Chizu's second biggest film, The Boy and the Beast. The story of a boy named Ren, or Kyuta, who runs away from home and finds himself in the land of beasts, Jutengai, where he stays with a bear beast named Kumatetsu, who's a warrior who's getting prepared for the day he has to face Iozan for the right to become Lord of the Beasts. I'll generally admit, when I first saw this movie in theaters, I wasn't a big fan of it, but after rewatching again and noticing these subtle moments between characters like Kumatetsu and Kyuta, it's a pretty close second to one of my favorite films by Hosoda. Like previous films, this one is yet again all about family, but unlike Wolf Children or Summer Wars, The Boy and the Beast is about adopted families. There is an element of blood-related families as well in the story that leaves an important dilemma to the film, but I won't be talking about that as that goes into spoiler territory. So I'm going to be more focusing on Kyuta and Kumatetsu's relationship. Both Kumatetsu and Kyuta have a bond that is very fragile, yet very strong, as they both feel loneliness, yet they yearn for companionship. Kumatetsu was just a lonely bear who literally taught himself martial arts, creating his own fighting style. Kyuta is a young boy who finds himself weak and is incapable of becoming independent because he's a child. But he's surprisingly smart for a young kid. With Kyuta's quick wits and Kumatetsu's strength, their dynamic was at first student and master, but it was hard to tell who was the student and who was the master at times. They learned from one another and developed their skills together, as well as their bond. That makes the film emotional for its characters. The fight scenes in this anime are probably my favorite in all of Hosoda's work. I should also mention that this was the last film to be distributed by the studio Funimation. These 4 films I consider the Funimation era of Hosoda's work, though the distribution rights eventually were bought by Universal and distributed by a company called G-Kids. Whether that's good or bad is up to you personally, but the next film may answer that.
What does it say?
Mirai.
Mirai?
It's your sister's name. It means future.
Funny enough, this was the only Hosoda film I haven't seen besides One Piece. That being Mirai. Mirai is about a young boy named Kun who is now an older brother to his little sister, Mirai, which means future in Japanese. Being the responsible older brother, he throws tantrums when he doesn't get his way or even the slightest of attention, but for reasons unknown, he is capable of traveling through time and interacting with his sister from the future, and many other members of the family tree, including a human version of his dog. Yeah, that one is really weird, I'll generally admit. I wasn't really that crazy about this one in all honesty. By all means, it's not bad, but compared to Hosoda's previous works, or the fact that I was watching all these in a marathon-like style, it just doesn't hold a candle. That, or I just watched so many Hosoda films I was getting kind of burnt out, and we only have one more left. There are some character dynamics I think are written perfectly. For starters, the sibling dynamic, I think is very relatable. I grew up with 4 younger sisters and an older one, and they tend to make me want to rip my hair out. But after the passage of time, you see how much they've changed and how much you've changed along with them. Yet again is another family dynamic movie, but I will say still one of his weaker works. But the second thing I like about this film is the concept of time travel itself. There is no altering of the future whatsoever. Time is going down the straight line that hasn't changed for anyone, and I think that's a good thing not to alter the past. The anime isn't about changing the future, but to embrace it, for we don't know what lies ahead, and Mirai shows that throughout the film. It leaves the audience to fill out the blanks and give their own interpretation on how much each story affects Kun and how it affects his bond for not just his baby sister, but to his entire family. It may not be my favorite film by Hosoda, but I'm sure it has its fans, and I feel it's worth watching to see what the future holds. The final film of this retrospective, until his next film in 3 years. Released in 2021 in Japan, and this January in the US, comes BELLE, or Belle, the Dragon and the Freckled Princess. By the time I talk about this film, it'll probably no longer be in theaters, which is where I saw this, so if you want to watch this movie, I highly recommend getting it on Blu-ray when it comes out. Anywho, the plot. Yuzu is a high school girl going through a lot of hardships. One day, she installs this application called You, where it automatically makes an avatar based off, well, you, which she names Belle, but without an E, which is confusing considering the anime is called Belle with an E, but I think they already explained that in the movie a bit, and it goes more for its story structure. In U, she becomes an overnight sensation, catching the attention of millions of users, including a dragon called the Beast. Along the way, Yuzu tries to discover who the Beast truly is. Will she see if he is truly a beast, or is there more to this so-called monster? Let's get this out of the way. Yes, it is a retelling of the classic tale as old as time, not the Disney version, of Beauty and the Beast, which is a public domain series, by the way. But the drastic change to the film is that, unlike the original versions, it's technically not a love story. And though this isn't the Disney version, there is musical moments in the film. And how are they? What do you expect? They are beautiful arrangements, done well in both Japanese and even in the English dub, which was the version I watched. Don't at me. It's also good. The music in this film doesn't just progress the film, but it also impacts the movie itself, leaving those moments and the songs in your mind, especially the final act of the film. The lyrics, how they're sung, and the impact it leaves are what make this film. Both the English and Japanese voices of Yuzu deserve so much respect, as do the people who made these songs. But sadly, not everything in this movie works really well. Starting with you, the app, not, you know what I mean. You is literally Oz from Summer Wars, which was the internet from our war game, which isn't bad looking in my general opinion, with you being more cluttered with buildings, avatars, and beautiful animation. I think it's more stylized than Oz giving out its own identity. But I will be honest when I say they don't properly explain how you really works. They just put like little earpieces in and they have like little sensors. At least with Oz, they actually give you a better understanding on how it works in this digital age, even in flip phones and laptops. This isn't the only problem I had with BELLE, as some story elements weren't well utilized or were even necessary, and I felt were there to just bloat the film. But by far the best thing about this film, and what makes it a must-watch, is Yuzu's story itself. Seeing her struggle with the loss of her mother, and still having a hard time accepting it, and what she goes through throughout the entire movie, leaves an important message, not just about the ability to move forward, but to help those when they need it the most. Not to mention how much of an impact we can leave onto others, both the good and the bad. I love how the story's told in two different animation styles, while Belle's story is mostly in stunning 3D. In the end, BELLE may not be Hosoda's all-time best work, but its emotional story of generosity, visual eye candy, and impacting music makes me believe in its message, and that the voice will carry on. Mamoru Hosoda has shown time and time again that he is capable of making some of the most emotionally impactful films I have ever seen. But I'm not the only one who thinks that. I've asked around the internet what moments in Hosoda's film left an impact towards them. So let's hear what the viewers have to say.
Despite people calling Summer Wars a retread of the Digimon movie, what I love is how it adapts Digimon's themes, transitioning to more serious adult themes, as well as focusing on family and the effects of over-relying on technology. It's something we all tend to do in today's time.
Robin here from Anime America. I unfortunately haven't had time to watch Mamoru Hosoda's latest film, BELLE, but I'm here to say that my favorite film of his is Wolf Children. It's a beautiful story centered around this amazing family as they move forward through the years embracing the joys and sorrows of life. Definitely recommend this one. I also asked my audience on Twitter which one was their favorite film, and their top 3 choices were Wolf Children, Summer Wars, and BELLE. Maybe I actually do need to watch this film. Okay, thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned, Anime America. Bye!
There you have it. That is my thoughts on every single movie by Mamoru Hosoda. After watching all these films, Mamoru Hosoda's inspiration comes from the simplest of places with the deepest of impacts. Whether it being needing help from others when you need it the most, family being an important part of your life, being unsure what the future holds, or taking a leap of faith, Mamoru Hosoda will continue his path towards making films that will leave you feeling different inside and to take a chance and be there for others. And I can't wait to see what comes next.